What are you training for?
Life.
Welcome to Train for Life, a podcast brought to you by ISI Elite Training. I'm Adam Rice, founder and CEO, and we'll be hosting this alongside Amanda Hall, our COO. Tune in weekly as we explore topics on personal and professional development to help you level up in all aspects of your life. We call this Training for Life. All right, guys, welcome back. We are going to be talking about the power of influence, especially in leadership, but in all areas of life today. So let's go ahead and dive in. And I want to start with this, Amanda. I think you're incredibly good at this, and I'm going to let you kind of take it from there. Is one of the ways, number one, like we can talk about influence, but I'm going to skip that because I think most people know what influence is. One of the ways that I think you're great at influencing people is you take the time and you have really good emotional intelligence in knowing what drives them, what motivates them, right? And so talk a little bit from a leadership. This could carry over to any people to people, right? So like taking the time and knowing what drives somebody, what motivates somebody, and how you, I don't want to say manipulate them because that's not what it is.
Where are we going? Where are we going with this?
Influencing them. But if you look at it from a little bit, it's keeping it ethically, morally right, because it's ultimately to help them win, right? But how do you use that in your day-to-day leadership?
How do I use it, or how do I?
Number one, how do you understand it, and then how do you use that when leading them to influence them?
I really think that relationship equity. There are other things about having influence and walking into a room, which we can talk about in a minute. But I do think when it comes to a leadership level, you have to build. This is with your friends and with your family and anyone, but you have to have a level of relationship equity. And the only way you get that is through getting to know someone. If you want to be a really effective leader and help them where they want to go, but you have no idea, and this isn't even just about goals are important, but you don't have any idea who they are, how they grew up, what their family life looks like, what their personal likes are. I think building relationship equity comes back to learning about asking them questions, spending some time. You cannot be a leader and be so high above that you come in and you're doing your own thing, but you're not taking time for your team to feel seen. So, I think relationship equity goes both ways. They got to get to know a little bit about you so they can trust you, right. And you have to learn a lot about them so that they feel like they can trust you as well. And I think that comes just from a little bit of time and getting to know each other and investing in the right conversations with them. I'm a big fan of, if you're new to leading someone, you better set up some one-on-one time. Okay. You need to have some time where you're sitting down and creating that. And then I would say ultimately, how do you use that to, whatever the goal is that you're trying to achieve? If someone trusts you and they believe and know, I shouldn't say that they believe it because it should be true. If they know that you want the best for them and that you believe in what they're doing and their effort and their voice and their value at the table, they're going to work 100 times harder towards whatever goal you're going at together than someone who doesn't feel seen, right? If they're just collecting a paycheck or they feel like you only want their work, something's misaligned there, and you're not going to go as fast. And it's the circle of trust. If you haven't never heard of that from Stephen Covey, it's great, and it talks about when you have trust, the speed that you can execute and operate at, and as a leader, the more successful you'll be because your members are successful is huge. So when you talk about influence and gaining relationship equity, it all comes back to it's going to move your vision. It's going to help you achieve your vision faster and move that level of initiatives, whatever that is you're working on, at a speed that you're not going to achieve if you don't have that there. Right. Because you don't have influence, right? You don't have influence for them to believe in what you're asking them to do.
So let's go tactical with this. How would somebody who say they're a small business owner, they're leading 3 people, or they're leading a household of 2 children, same thing, people, right? What is like 2 to 3 tactical things that they can do to gain that level of influence through relationship equity outside of scheduled one-on-ones was a tactical thing, definitely.
Right. I mean, I think for me, there's a presence that you need to have when you walk into a room as a leader. Um, they need to feel that you do portray a level of confidence, and this isn't ego at all. Like, come into a room prepared, show up the way that you want to be seen. It immediately sets the tone for the rest of your team to trust you more.
Right.
I'm a big believer in when I walk in the door, I can't bring anything that happened on the outside in, right? So for me, it's coming through the door, making sure I say good morning to everyone that's in my path. And then I even try to come out if they're not there when I get there and ask them specifically on a Monday, how was your weekend? What did you do? If I knew they were doing something, how did that go? I'm already taking time to ask them. When I see my kids, right, the first thing I'm saying is, how was your day?
Yep.
And as they become teenagers and they don't want to answer the question, then you have to ask like 3 more questions to get them to answer, then I have to actually say, was it good or bad and why was it? But getting underneath and asking those questions. So first thing is be intentional with how you show up. Second thing is ask them how they are. Engage in something with them right off the bat so that they feel seen. I think that's really important. And then from a leadership standpoint, I'll say one thing that I've noticed, especially in young leaders and someone told me this, by the way, it wasn't who's led many people. When you come into a meeting that you're leading, or say you're sitting at a dinner, you have a dinner for your team.
Right.
Often, if you're the leader, you should not sit at the back of the room or at the end of the table. You should find yourself anchored in the middle or at the front. So if it's at a dinner table, sit in the middle. Where you sit and how you position yourself to interact with your team and how they see you matters. It matters. Everything, and you just said this in the last episode, that you're always communicating something, right? Negative or positive. So one simple tactic is when you show up to a meeting that you're leading, sit in a position where you're positioned to lead the meeting. If you don't, you're not seen as the leader. And I know that is all about influence. I think in body language, so how you show up, and maybe let's dive underneath that. I know you've mentioned that self-awareness to having influence as a leader. And I know you and I have talked about this a lot, even on a conference call, how people look behind the camera and the message that they're sending.
Yeah, I think
flipping that to you, like, what do you think about that?
I mean, I think even from a coaching perspective, right, because that's the world I live in and have lived in for over 10 years, is gaining influence when you are in a room of people comes down to several factors. I mean, body language is our number one way of communication. Not a lot of people know that. So how the position of our shoulders, the position of our posture, what we're doing with our hands, how we walk through a door, the amount of space. If you want to have more influence, you have to create more space. So even from like a practical way with coaching is, if you guys have seen like coaches with their hands on their knees, wide base with their feet, that's a way to gain influence inherently through that. If you're just walking into a room, it's acknowledging through eye contact. You don't even verbally have to say anything, but acknowledging people as you're coming through gains massive influence in that space. And then you're gaining command, and now people are listening to you. So I think when it comes down to that, so many people aren't aware of their body language. So yawning during a meeting, yawning during a call, like, sure, we're all tired at a certain point in time, but you got to like fight that, right? Because how you're communicating, I don't give a crap about what you're saying if you're yawning. And maybe you could be incredibly interested. The amount of eye contact, the head nodding, the voice inflection that you use, all of these things, you got to inherently, it goes back to really showing people that you care. So eye contact with them when you're talking to them, using excitement in your voice. Too many people don't have awareness of how they are being perceived. And I think a tactical way, at least this is what we use and have used in coaching, is to video yourself, right? And have someone, if you're a leader and you're running a 5-person meeting, have someone video your meeting and take it back just like game tape and look at not what you're saying, but what do you look like? Is it somebody that you would follow? Right, and gaining influence in that way. So how do you, another tactical thing that I'd love for you to go through is motivating people to performance. So everybody's motivated by different things. Obviously we could go as simple as the love languages, or we could go into Enneagrams, but whether it's gifts or affirmation or going to the next level or whatever it is, how are you picking up outside of asking those things that they're motivated by? And then give me an example of how you may motivate somebody by something that they're motivated by without them even really knowing that's what you're doing.
I mean, I still think you have to have I don't know, you don't have to ask, but you have to be around someone enough to really know what they care about. And I would kind of challenge that back to, I know I said one-on-one, but you can spend a lot more time with your employees if you're, if you have an office. Maybe sometimes you need to sit out of your office. For us, I love riding with different members of our team to work out together.
Right.
Or when we travel together, we get to know a lot about each other, which, not everybody gets privileged to do, but you really do. And you get to have conversations or, have team builds with your team.
Right.
So that way you're doing something outside of your office that everyone gets to connect around and be together around. And then you're going to see their life. And really, most people are motivated by, I think there's a few things I think that everybody loves. Everyone loves recognition.
Yep.
The more you recognize somebody, especially in front of their peers, or even just saying something, in a one-off fashion, I do think that gains you a level of influence because I take it back to people need to feel seen.
Yep.
I know we talk about relationship equity and getting to know them, but if you really go underneath it, people want to feel like you see them and you know them.
Right.
My job as a leader is not for me to be the most successful person. It's for everybody around me to be. If I, even when they're not present, if I go to another meeting and it's going to benefit them for me to build them up, I want to do that around that other individual because that's someone they're interacting with.
Right.
For one, because I think my team's amazing and the best. But I think that because I spend time. So people want to feel seen. So, when I think through like ways, I've done crazy stuff in the past. So I go way back. I was a leader of the store at Verizon Wireless. It was like a multi-million-dollar store. I was, asking this entire sales team. This is back in the day when we actually had quotas and sold cell phones were different. Everybody didn't order them online. You had to go to a store and buy it.
And pagers.
That was way back.
And pagers and pagers.
Yeah. I'm so young. No, but here I am. I'm leading this entire office. We've got customer service, technicians, a sales team, and we had launched all these new KPIs and all these performance indicators, and I needed them to be motivated to be on board with everything we're selling, which means I need to have a sales meeting where I'm aligning everybody. You're talking about a retail hours, right? Not everybody wants to come in for a meeting an hour before the store opens if you're closing that night.
Right.
So to get them motivated to come in, the first meeting, they all showed up. I knew it. They were going to be. I personally bought breakfast with my own money because, by the way, we worked off commission. So if they make more money in sales, I make more money. So why not, right? I didn't have a budget for it. I just did it. Personally brought breakfast in, and then I bought all these things. I just went to the Walmart across the street and brought, like, it was summertime, so I did like a cooler and I did gift cards, and we did this meeting, and everybody who we kind of did a game at the end, and everybody got something.
Right.
But I did that because I knew I needed to motivate them. I needed to influence them to want to come to the next meeting. It honestly wasn't about that meeting. It was like, how do I get them to realize that every meeting isn't going to be an hour of me talking at them? We're going to have some fun. They're going to get something out of it. I'm going to make it valuable. So I think it's finding out, whether you're moving a whole team, you have to serve them. You have, if that's bringing in breakfast one day, I've done so many things, and I honestly do those things because I know I want to, but I also know the outcome of that means that they are going to see that I did something for them without them asking, or that they thought. Yep. So, it's kind of a bigger picture, but it does play into it. The leader who always expects their team to give to them and they never give anything back, you are at some point that influence is going to shift, and the team feels that they have more influence over you, and you will lose. You have lost influence because you haven't given to them, and you expect them to give to you.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So that really is my mindset. The more I give, the more my team wants to give, and then the more you give, the more you love to give. So it's a win-win.
Yeah. I think the last thing that I was even thinking about too with influence is you have to know their vision, right? You said it earlier, like you have to know where they want to go. The only way you do that is through relationship equity and having conversations around that. And I think being okay with knowing like if where they want to go isn't under your leadership realm,
Yes.
right? It's like
It's a big one.
many like leaders are like, and I also feel like so many people being led by their leaders are scared to say, I want to do A or B, because they're like, oh, this is going to hinder my ability here. And so they're scared to do that. And so, but why I say that is because now you gain more influence when you know where someone wants to go. There's a big difference between calling someone out versus calling someone forward, right? It's like, hey, you told me you wanted to be this leader. You told me you want to be a director of operations. Well, the way that you just showed up to that meeting isn't like a director of operations. And even so, you could ask it and flip the question back to them is, hey, the way you showed up today for that meeting, do you think a director of operations would show up like that? And they start to self-select and start to self-answer, and then you get so much more buy-in and influence, I think. But if you don't know where they want to go, it's like, it's tough. So anything else on influence? I know it's like a topic you're super passionate about.
Yeah, I think this kind of goes back. We talked earlier about self-awareness. You have to have enough self-awareness to see if you bring a level of influence to the table that you want. If you're really slow to move your team to do something, you need to go back and check your level of influence. If your kids feel really, I'll take it personal, right? If your kids if it feels like there's a distance there between you and your kids, there is a level of influence with them that you do not have. Yep. It can come back to trust. Maybe you need to spend a little bit more time with them. Maybe there's a level of giving that you need for that. Whatever that looks like, you really need to dig under it. So I always say, looking at the level of influence that you have is really important. And then as a leader, it all starts with relationship equity, but how you show up in those things that you decide to do. And I know we've said this entire season feels like it's all about it's in your control.
Yep.
The level of influence you have really is in your control, and it's not about being the smartest person in the room. Right. That does not influence anyone. If anything, I think when people know that you need them and you're vulnerable with the areas that they're talented and they close those gaps, that again builds another layer of influence that they can trust you, and that you value what they bring to the table. So, I just think take a moment to think about the level of influence and who do you have it with and who do you not.
Right.
I think it's valuable to know that. But yeah, so I think it really starts with having some perspective to look at that and question it. If you're not moving the needle in the areas you want to move in, especially in the area of leadership, you have a gap in the way that you're influencing others. And you need to dig underneath that, get around, ask some people to find out where your gap is.
Boom. Mic drop.
Done. Bump.
Awesome. Well, this was an amazing episode. I feel like
I'm not passionate about this at all.
Yeah, I know. You can tell.
I think
Go
I
back
stood
and
up straighter in my seat.
Yeah, you did.
Watch the YouTube now.
Speaking of influence, you should check your body language. So someone should do a play-by-play of this episode and do a left screen, right screen, and see if a level of passion in what you're doing increases the level of your body language. It'd be interesting to see, because I guarantee you would see a difference. But no, man, this was awesome. So this wraps today's episode. Until next time, guys, we've got several more episodes in this season still yet to come. And we couldn't be more excited. We love the direction it's heading, and are excited to continue to really speak with you guys and continue the conversation. So until next time, we'll see you on the turf.
Where are we going? Where are we going with this?
Influencing them.